This video is all about the extra helpful main skill. There are 3 Pokemon with this main skill at the present time, and they are Jolteon, Arcanine, and Gallade. And so in this video, we'll cover each of these Pokemon, compare them, and also talk in general about how you can apply Pokemon with this main skill to your team strategy. So first of all, the Jolteon and the Arcanine are a little bit power crept by the Gallade. The Gallade is available at Lapis Lakeside. Ralts is a somewhat late game Pokemon. And for the most part, if you find a really good Ralts, you want to keep that for the Gardevoir. Because Gardevoir is one of the best Pokemon in the game as a healer Pokemon. I've made several videos on the Energy for Everyone main skill and about Gallade. And so overall, for the most part, the sub-skills that you will be looking for in a Gallade will be the same on the Gardevoir. So maybe if you go for some extended hunt for Ralts and you settle on the best one for Gardevoir, then maybe the second one you can consider turning into a Gallade. The one downside with branched evolutions, like this one right here, is the candy that you then put into Gallade, you could have fueled into Gardevoir. So in that regard, the Gallade is at a little bit of a disadvantage, I would say, compared to, for example, the Arcanine. Arcanine is just one evolution. It's a single species and it does one thing. Jolteon is somewhat similar to the Gallade in the sense that there are so many evolutions to consider. The candy that you would put into a Jolteon could be spent on Vaporeon or Espeon, so you're kind of losing out on that optimization. If we do compare the Jolteon to the Arcanine, we can see that the Arcanine is fairly fast. Round 40 is super fast, and 36 is among the fastest in the game. And then I think overall, if you compare the percentage, the Jolteon is faster compared to the lower skill rate. I think the Arcanine wins. The one nuance here with the Jolteon is the typing. You can use Jolteon on a Raikou team, and that can be pretty strong. And then I suspect that Entei will be getting the Helper Boost main skill as well, so Arcanine could potentially be a good Pokemon to use on a Raikou, Entei team. And I think then if we go back and compare the Jolteon to the Gallade, they are pretty similar. Overall, obviously, they're pretty fast and have decent skill rates, but they are both suffering from that branched evolution line where if you do decide on investing on either of these, they steal some of those resources that could be put to use on better Pokemon. So for the most part, I think the Jolteon is a decent one. Now that the Raikou event is over, I don't see as big a use for the Jolteon personally. So for the most part, I think we are going to look at the Arcanine and the Gallade in this video. The big part of the main skill is that depending on the level of the main skill, you get a multiplier extra help from a random Pokemon. What that means is the berries and the ingredients that the Pokemon can produce and not the skill triggers. So for the most part, it's just you tap the Gallade and then one of the 5 Pokemon in our team, it could be Gallade too, will just have X number of productions of berries and ingredients. And that's the whole thing. So for the most part, this main skill, overall, when you consider the value of it, is not particularly strong. It does have a huge exceptional footnote though, and that's what this video is all about for the most part, because if we look at the numbers here, for the table, you can see that if you have an Arcanine, for example, with level 4 extra helpful, so you level it from, or evolved it from Growlithe into Arcanine, and then you have the skill level up M on it, then at level 4, we're looking at 8, I keep doing that with the mouse, am I not? We're looking at 8 extra helps per trigger, and 5% skill trigger is pretty good, particularly with this speed right here. So to an extent, it could potentially be worthwhile to use a seed on it or look for a decent Arcanine, but for the most part, it's not a great skill specialist. I would put it in D tier. The only redeeming quality is you can do something called overstacking. So not overcharging, which is on the energy front, but overstacking, which is on the inventory side of things. What happens is when this skill triggers and a different Pokemon has a full inventory, because once you pop the Gallade, then it's never going to really hit full inventory because then you're not using the skill properly. But if you have one Gallade or Arcanine and 4 other team members, let's say they're all Berry Specialist, so they do sneaky snacking once they hit max inventory, then the Arcanine or the Gallade, with the extra helpful, when you pop it, you can hit something called an overstacking, where it exceeds the inventory. And that is pretty interesting because you can overstack in 1 week, change research area, and then pop it. So for example, if you have 4 Walrein and an Arcanine, once they have hit the max inventory, then they're going to go into sneaky snacking. And at that point, they're probably also getting quite tired because you're not really running a healer Pokemon. And what you can then do is just consume a lot of pillows and put those pillows into the extra helpful Pokemon. So even though we have 4 Pokemon that are just completely out, you have the single Pokemon with the extra helpful. And if you have one that is quite high tier extra helpful, you can just overstack a lot on these Walrein or Raichu or what it is. And for team event preparation, that can be incredibly powerful. So for example, if you run Raikou and Jolteon and then 3 berry finding Pokemon, then that can be a huge boost for that new week. Let's say it's an event. And I think that is potentially the best use case for these Pokemon. And I haven't really gone too much into the numbers of things. I tend to stay a little bit away from that. Brovine is really strong in that sense, so I will somewhat leave that up to him to cover. I do recommend his channel strongly. It's in the video description of all my videos. And he's talked a lot about this overstacking strategy just over time. So that is definitely one to consider. Overall, I would say it's just not the strongest main skill. It has a niche use case, and aside from that, you mostly want to preserve the main skill seeds and your team member spots for more productive Pokemon. If I was to paint a picture, though, of what we would be looking for, I would say definitely the skill level up M. You don't want to waste the main skill seeds on it. Potentially also just main skill level up S. But maybe you want that in the 3rd spot potentially because the skill trigger is super strong on the skill specialists. And then we have looking something like this potentially. You can throw the berry finding in there too. I don't think the berry finding makes a big difference here. I would much rather just save my main skill seeds and have the skill triggers. The reason why berry finding is not a particularly good idea is because when you're overstacking, you're using the prior week to prepare some of these berry Pokemon into the new week. And at that point, whatever happens in the current week when you're preparing, like, okay, you get some fewer berries, but you're overstacking 3 of those or 4 of those berry specialist into the new week and then pop it and then just like see the whole heavens come down. The max capacity there is 999, so that is a huge limit. Like, can you imagine popping 4,000 berries? Just pop, 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 and have that as a whole team setup. It would be funny though to do some numbers on how fast you would reach that 999 with the Jolteon and the Raikou setup. That could be interesting. When it comes to the ingredients, you just have the bag size of 600 or what the max is whenever you watch this video. And so that one is a bit more easy to prepare for because that has a set limit. You can't overstack your inventory. And for the most part, I would say the biggest value of that extra helpful is going to be the berry Pokemon. So I am curious just to consider how far in advance I would want to do the extra helpful setup. The thing that I'm thinking of is I think the Raikou event was really well thought out. Like, for example, the second week Ultra 4 Snorlax prevents you from doing an instance with 3 encounters where you can just do Raikou, Good Camp Ticket, and a friend instance, and then you have a decent chance of finding just a hungry Raikou. But because the Snorlax is Ultra 4 at Greengrass Isle, you're going to get a whole bunch of encounters. And then in terms of extra helpful, what they did with the Electric Week is they made it so that you can't overstack for like 4 weeks in advance, or however long it takes, maybe 2 or 3, and then have that insane triple pop into the Raikou event. So whenever they do the Entei event, they're going to do the same thing where there's going to be a Fire Week, a Rest Week, and then a double Entei Week. Pretty much. Like, I think the structure there is just for game balance, and the big thing there is to consider, how do you go about the prep week? Is the extra helpful enough to where if you do the Raikou and the Jolteon and the 3 Wall Rain or what it is that going to pack enough of a punch to where you would have been better off to just run some decent ingredient Pokemon, do an overcharge strategy potentially? That one you can do whenever though, and just pack those in the back. But there is a lot to consider in terms of event preparation with this main skill, as you can see. And I think various players will have different approaches with this one, just because there are 3 different Pokemon that you can potentially hunt for. None of them particularly good on their own, but then they have that niche use case that is just impressive and awesome, and it's just like this in-game helper whistle that you don't have to pay for. You just have to sacrifice a little bit of Snorlax strength the previous week or 2. So what I'm then considering is maybe the big event prep could be for the Fire Week, but at that point it's just probably not something you do want, to where if you get a very high drowsy on the Snorlax, then you're just going to encounter a lot of these higher level Pokemon, and typically you want to catch the first stage, so that could be awkward. And yeah, well, at the very least, maybe it could power up your nap sessions during that part of the event. So overall, an interesting main skill. None of the Pokemon really shine all that much, with this one exception niche use case. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment down below. You can subscribe for more Pokemon Sleep content and check out the playlists in the video description. There are a lot of them and they're nicely sorted, so I'm sure you'll find something. Thank you for watching.